The will they, won't they debate over the Fed's move at its June meeting will keep us entertained until, well, June. But in the meantime, the narrative around the head of the central bank isn't exactly great. Today's morning brief doesn't hold back, saying Jay Powell's approval rating will keep tanking if he does his job right. Our colleague Ethan Wolff-Mann cites a new Gallup poll which shows just 36% of adults having either a fair amount or a great deal of confidence in him. Ethan joins us now. Ethan, walk us through the morning brief, your take, and what really is at stake here for Powell and the Fed with regard to the general public sentiment.
Hey, Brad. Yeah, thanks for having me. I think what's really interesting here is that, Powell's numbers are down. And what's interesting to me, at least when I saw this, I was like, okay, wow, they're going to get a lot worse if he does his job. These are the worst approval numbers of, I think since the Gallup said of all time. They haven't been tracking this that long, but, certainly in the past, since the Greenspan era. And what's interesting is we've already seen 10 months of slowing inflation. And we're talking about a recession, but we're not in one yet. And that's this really interesting thing is that, the pain is actually fairly limited for the worst Fed approval rate of all time. This doesn't really seem fair to me. I don't think anybody really needs to be carrying Jay Powell's water. He's doing just fine, and he's a big boy. But it's interesting to think about this because, why really? Is it the prices which are coming down? I mean, they're not as worse as job losses. And if we've seen, if we think about the March projections, things are going to get worse. That unemployment rate is very low. So, obviously, the only person whose approval really matters at the end of the day is the person who says, here, you are the Fed chair, and that's Biden, of course. And so I whether this is, that important, I think is moot here, but it's interesting to sort of see the public perception of this role. And, again, another reminder of it's probably a good thing that this isn't an elected position because you would see something very different.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, Ethan, there is a certain subsector of the financial punditry that always hates what the Fed is doing, not just when they think that we are headed towards a recession, but also when they were cutting rates, that they were setting us up for disaster. I guess what's unusual here is more the public opinion. I mean, I wonder when I see these polls, if you ask most Americans, what's the name of the Federal Reserve Chair? They might not know that. They just know they don't feel great right now.
Yeah, that's something we saw, in this data. They talked about Yellen, they talked about Biden and some of the other leaders in the Senate and in the House, and there's a lot of don't know. And I think a lot of times people are like, who is that? They probably still think it's Ben or Janet or somebody like that. But I think the other thing here is this is a thankless position, and I mean, if we remember back in the Volcker era. Man, they were nailing 2x4s. The construction industry was nailing on the Fed's facade, and so I think there's a long history of hating on the Fed, and that's something that it's sort of our scapegoat. I think all the politicians can sort of try. I mean, Trump was doing it. Biden has not done that. I don't think we think he will do that, but it's sort of like, okay, you appoint this guy, and you kind of can blame the bad things on him because it doesn't really matter at the end of the day, unless that comes to a head. But I think it's interesting to think about how this might evolve, because if we're starting at a low before the recession, where are we going to go here?
Yeah, it's a good point. Ethan, good write-up today in the Morning Brief. Make sure everybody subscribes to the Morning Brief if you don't already. Thanks so much, Senior Editor Ethan Wolff-Mann. Appreciate it.